Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome back to the channel for this installment of Open Mic, the show where the mic is open. The floor, as they would say, is yours. What are the things that you guys want to talk about? What are the issues you want to discuss? That's what we're here to do on Open Mic. A much more laid back, casual, conversational kind of version of the John Campea Show, if you will. It's good to have you here. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea. It's good to have you guys here. And yeah, there are two different ways that you can get a topic or question for me to address on the show. The first way is if you watch this show any of the 23 hours of the day that we're not streaming live, go ahead and use our tip link at streamelements.com/JohnCampea/tip. And you can send one in that way. Or if you are watching live right now, you can just go ahead and use the super chat feature in the chat area of the live stream here. And as long as your topic or question is appropriate to be used on our show, we will address it. And hello to everybody who's here. Michael Jones, Eno, Stevie, King Daddy, Dad Boy, Jim One, and on and on and on. Good to have all you guys here for this installment. Fun show this morning. I don't know how many of you guys had a chance to watch the John Campea Show that we did earlier. Me, Ray, Jonathan, and Rob. It was actually a really, really fun show. I had a good time today. And I hope those of you who joined us also had a good time today. Listen, as we often do, before we get rolling on your questions, oh yeah, some people are asking about my hoodie. Let me pull back my mic here. Godolphin University, of course, from Gen V, Ann got me this. My wife got me this. How great is my wife? How great is my wife? Anyway, got me this Godolphin University shirt. I love it. Anyway, so as we normally do here, we like to start off Open Mic with a topic that's out there. And this topic just kind of came across my desk a little bit earlier today. Apparently, for those of you who may have seen this, it's been revealed that the chief head guy at HBO, not the head of Warner Brothers Discovery, not David Zaslav, but the head of HBO, and apparently one of his lieutenants, have been accused of, and apparently it's been proven, that they actually created fake social media accounts to go out and troll critics who were speaking badly about some of their shows. Now, look, you guys know what I think of HBO. HBO is the gold standard, right? When it comes to creating television, HBO is the gold standard. Period. End of sentence. Is every single thing they do magnificent? No, of course not. But nobody over the course of the last couple of decades has as consistently, I mean, every time they make a show, that show potentially can be in the top 10 greatest shows of all time, right? Like we just assume that coming out of HBO. They're great. They're fantastic. However, not everything they've put out has been completely magnificent. And a report has come out saying that, you know, the head guy, I can't remember how to pronounce his last name, Boyles or something like that. Anyway, apparently very thin-skinned, did not like the fact, Cut Robin in the live chat saying, unless you're the Idol. Yep, the Idol is a very good example of when they don't knock it out of the park, right? Anyway, Casey Bloys, that's it, not Boyles, Bloys. Thank you, the fanboy. Casey Bloys, apparently at his behest, arranged for some of his underlings at HBO to create fake accounts and to go on and troll, disparage, or contradict film critics online who gave any of their shows negative reviews. Now, the first thing I want to point out is that if you just read the headlines to that, you'd think that they created 100,000 bots to go out and troll attack these things. That's not the case. I think it literally can be counted on two hands, the number of fake accounts that they created. Like it's a small sample size, but still, it's just in principle, right? In principle that they did this. So they go out and troll these things. Now, I got a couple of thoughts about this. Number one, before I get into it, let me acknowledge right up front that this is not the worst thing in the world, okay? It's not like they went out and had their homes vandalized. It's not like they sent threatening letters to them. It's not like they destroyed their careers. They had a couple of fake accounts go and put up some trolly messages. They didn't dox them. They didn't do anything like that. So I am acknowledging, okay, before anybody comes back at me saying, John, it wasn't that bad. I am acknowledging right up front, it wasn't the worst thing in the world, right? It's not the epitome of corruption and stuff like that. It's bad. But again, before I go into my own piece, I will acknowledge it's really not that bad. Not good, but not all that bad, okay? I've said that up front, so please, nobody give me grief about this. All right. That being said, the whole thing is just juvenile. Like, it's just juvenile. What I would want to ask Casey Bloys is, who cares? Like, the critic's job is to give their opinion about something. That's it. No more, no less. And the vast majority of the time, most critics are singing the glory hallelujah praises of stuff that comes out on HBO. But every once in a while, you're going to hit into a double play instead of knocking one out of the park. You're going to choke every now and again. That happens to everybody. You, less than most, but even to you, it's going to happen. And it is then the critic's job to say, hey, you know, I watched this thing and it didn't work. And that's their job. The amount of sensitivity you have to think, oh my God, this cannot stand. This cannot stand. We must attack them online. We you underling, create a fake account and go and argue with that critic. Tell them, no, our show's great and all that kind of stuff. What I want to ask Casey is, Casey, did any of your cars disappear because a critic said they didn't like one of your shows? No? Did you lose the love of any of your family because some critic wrote that they didn't like one of your shows? No? Did any money from your bank account, Casey, disappear, poof, like a fart in the wind overnight because some critic that you've probably never met in your life and probably never will wrote that, hey, I watched one of the HBO shows and I didn't like it. Did money from your bank account disappear when they did that? No? Then who cares? It's a part of the business. If you're going to get heaped with praise, like HBO often does because they make awesome television, and you're going to take that and accept it, then you got to take and accept the criticism too, even if the criticism is unfair. And I'm not saying the criticism was unfair. I'm just saying, even if you deem that the criticism is unfair, who cares? Who cares? If some rando from some outlet wrote that they didn't like it, okay, they didn't like it. And maybe that'll turn a couple of people off from watching the show. All right, well, that's going to happen. That's part of the business. Now, like I said from the beginning, it would have been a much bigger deal if they had created thousands of fake bots and gone out and just cyber trolled these guys. It was a handful of things. So it's really, at the end of the day, it's not a big deal. But it's something that it just amazes me that some of these executive types in entertainment, whether they're big A-list actors, big A-list directors, big time producers, or even studio executives, that they have the same fallibility that we as regular human beings do. I mean, because look, I'm going to hit you guys with something here. All right. Are you ready to have your minds blown? Are you ready to have your minds blown? I'm about to tell you something that is going to completely blow your mind. You ready? Here it is. And I know this is hard to believe. Ready? Here it goes. Not everybody loves the John Campea Show or John Campea. Did I blow your mind? Did I just blow your mind? Not everyone. It's hard to believe. It's like finding somebody who doesn't like puppies. But not everyone loves the John Campea Show. Not everyone loves John Campea. Shocking. I know. Shocking. And, here's the thing. I'm being called a liar. The live chat is calling me a liar. So here's the thing. If one of the things that I learned very, very early on, I mean, this is before the John Campea Show, before Collider Movie Talk, before AMC Movie Talk. I'm talking about going back to the movie blog days, right? And obviously I am on a much more small, infinitesimal, tiny, hardly even in existence scale compared to HBO. But one of the things that I learned all the way back in the movie blog days was that when you put something out there for the world, whether it's a piece of art, a piece of entertainment, an opinion, an article, a podcast, a television show, a movie, a song, whatever. When you decide to put something out into the world, you're going to have people that don't like it. Hopefully more people like it than dislike it, but sometimes that won't be true either. But you're going to have people who don't like it. I learned that very, very easy. Very, very, very early, I should say. I would write articles on the movie blog, or I would do a podcast on the movie blog. And sure, there'd be a lot of people say, oh, love the article, or oh, I like the thing. But there would always be somebody who'd say, I think you're stupid for saying that, or that's idiotic. And, at first, back when I was doing the movie blog, I got to say that hurt my feelings like it would for anybody, right? It hurt my feelings at first. But then I had this epiphany. I had this revelation, if you will. And that revelation was, and it took a couple of years for me to get here, and it's actually two revelations. The first revelation was the understanding that this happens to everybody. I think it was like one of my favorite sportscasters. There was a sportscaster that I loved. He did a show called Primetime Sports. His name was Bob McCowan. Okay. Big Canadian sports talk radio guy at the time. And I loved him, and I thought everybody loved him. And then I came across websites that were just hate sites on Bob McCowan. And I'd be like, what, how can you not like Bob McCowan? But then I found out, hey, guess what? There's a lot of people who don't like Bob McCowan, and there were entire websites dedicated to how much they hated Bob McCowan, the sportscaster. And I was like, huh. And that's when I realized that's like, you know what? This is going to happen to everybody. If you are anybody that puts stuff out there, you have to accept that there's going to be people who don't like it and don't like you. That's part of it. That's just a part of it. And I learned that very easy. So that's the first thing, very early, I should say. That's the first thing I learned. The second part of the epiphany was people who wrote in not liking my articles. And listen, I didn't always write the best articles. People who wrote in who didn't like my podcast. And hey, I didn't always put out the best podcast episodes. Which is true. Their dislike of my article, their dislike of my podcast, or even to a degree, their dislike of me, I realized, I looked around and went, wait a minute. I'm still here. It didn't affect me at all. I have to accept that if I put stuff out there, there's going to be people who don't like it. Got to accept that. And then number two, people not liking it is no way at all affects me. I'm like, wow. And I'll tell you what, it goes all the way back to the movie blog days. I literally, once the movie blog started getting a little popular, and I'll explain again how all this ties back into Casey Bloys and the whole thing at HBO. But all the way back in the earliest days of the movie blog, well, not the earliest days. It was once the movie blog started to get kind of big. Like once I started getting like 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, hits per month and stuff like that. Once it started getting a little bit big, and I kid you not, there were entire blogs just dedicated to how much they didn't like me started popping up, like entire blogs. It wasn't WordPress. What was the thing before WordPress? It was like blog something, like these free blog sites, right? A couple of free blog sites started popping up about how much they just don't like. That was the whole blog was about. And Blogspot, thank you, the viewer. Yes, Blogspot. There's somebody who was around back in the day. Blogspot, right? So like there would be entire things. And then when YouTube started popping up, and this is back probably once I started at AMC. But once I started AMC, there even then started to pop up a couple of like by these guys in their basements. And I don't mean that as an insult. I mean, literally, you could tell it was guys in their basements, like who just would make YouTube videos about not how much they disagreed with my movie opinions, it's just how much they disliked me. And I remember going, huh. And then I went back to those two epiphanies I had. Epiphany number one, whatever I do, there's going to be people who like it and people who don't like it. And I have to accept that. Epiphany number two, it doesn't affect me at all. You know, I realized back when I was at AMC, I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Do I still have my beautiful, awesome wife? I do. Great. Do I still have my incredible, loving family? I do. Great. Open my bank account. Is whatever money I have still there in my bank account? Look at that. It's still there. Is the sun going to rise tomorrow? Yes, it is. And will I still get to do what I love to do? Yes, I do. Guess what? What they said means nothing to me, and it doesn't do anything. And so what started happening was, and I know this is a big, long story leading up to the Casey Bloys thing, and I'm sure many of you figured out how it ties in, but still. But as time started to continue and AMC started to become popular, right? I started making AMC. We had X number of, whatever, and we were growing AMC. And as you grow, your followers and fans grow, but also your detractors grow. Part of life. That's part of the reality. Nothing wrong with that. And I started to have some people writing into me, and this happens a lot today, saying, John, did you hear that so-and-so said something about you? Aren't you going to respond? I'm like, no. Why would I? Not sure why I would. I mean, I developed this this philosophy years ago that my YouTube channel is not to talk about other YouTubers. Now, that whole Sniper Wolf thing came up. That was a separate, that wasn't talking or complaining about how Sniper Wolf does YouTube. No, there was a situation where somebody literally put other people's lives in danger. And really that was more of a editorial about me talking about YouTube not doing anything about it. That was something complete. I wasn't talking about Sniper Wolf's YouTubing or anything like that. Sniper Wolf literally put some people's lives at danger. And I was really angry about that. YouTube did nothing about it, nothing really about it. But other than that, I really have a rule that I don't talk about other YouTubers on my YouTube channel. That's not what my YouTube channel's for. I know there's some little girls out there that like drama, but I'm not one of them. I don't like drama. I don't care about drama. And I'm not an insecure person. So, and there was once or twice in my career when I did say something, either usually was in response to another blogger or podcaster or YouTuber. And out of those two times, I just regretted it. I mean, nothing good comes out of it, right? Nothing good comes out of it. And you guys have heard me say this. My dad had this saying, and I'm sure he didn't make up the saying. I'm sure it was out there before, but my dad used to say, the only thing that happens when you get in a shit slinging contest is everyone ends up smelling like shit. And I don't want to smell like shit. So anyway, I would get people writing to me and say, like, why don't you respond to that person? Why don't you say something? And like, I just like, well, why? My life has not been affected at all. Everything I have, I still have. Everything I get to do, I still get to do. And my life is every bit as great as it was when I went to bed last night. So why would I care? And why should I let it bother me? And I've always kind of said this too. And this is like when I have, new YouTubers and podcasters and bloggers and all that kind of stuff writing to me and asking me for advice about YouTubing or blogging or podcasting. One of the first things I always tell them is this. It's like, don't get involved in drama. Focus on what you're there for. Whatever your blog is about, whatever your podcast is about, whatever your YouTube channel is about. Focus on that and don't really focus on if you have detractors, because if you don't have any detractors, you're doing something wrong, right? If you don't have any detractors, you're doing something wrong. That's that. But what I always tell people who ask me for advice and stuff like that, especially when like drama is brewing, what I always say is this: if you are so important that somebody else needs to talk about you, that doesn't mean that they need to be important enough that you need to talk about them. And I've always said that, right? It's just a thing. Who cares? Who cares? So when I look at something like this HBO situation and Casey Bloys and whatnot, it's like, okay, you have mountains and legions of fans of your station, of your network, of your platform, of your shows. And you're going to have some detractors along the way. What I would want to say to Casey Bloys is, why do you care? Why would you care so much to the point that you have to get underlings to go and create fake social media accounts to go and troll those who are saying they don't like your show? I don't get it. I just honestly don't understand why be so sensitive? Like, why can't get that upset? I just don't understand. And listen, again, there was an old saying from, you guys might have heard me say this before. Why am I suddenly freezing on his name? The Sirius XM guy, the number one radio star in the world, Sirius XM. Help me out. Why am I freezing on his name? Long, curly, dark hair, Stern? Howard Stern. That's it. Sorry. Michael Gonzalez got in just as I said it. So Howard Stern. I remember Howard Stern talked about this. He said, listen, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, so forgive me if I'm not getting it word for word right, but Howard Stern said, listen, I love it when people hate me because that means they're listening. It's like that was also a little bit of a revelation to me too. But so that's what I would say to Casey Bloys is like, for you to have critics of like the biggest outlets every once in a while criticizing your show, that means they're talking about your show. That's how important you are, Casey. That's how important your brand is. If you weren't important and you weren't relevant and you weren't significant, they wouldn't even bother talking about your shows, positively or negatively. So who cares if they did? I guarantee you that every one of those critics, and there's only a handful of them that he did this to, but every one of those critics that you created fake social media accounts to go and troll because of a negative review you gave, I guarantee you they probably had like 10 positive ones for some of your content for every one negative one. So number one, Casey, understand that whenever you put something out into the world, there are going to be people who don't like it. Doesn't matter how good it is, there's going to be people who don't like it. And number two, some people not liking it is completely inconsequential. It has no effect on you and no effect on your life. So who cares? Let it go. And that is my kind of, that's kind of my advice to anybody who gets involved in any kind of media, whether it's a musician, whether you're a writer, whether you're a blogger or a YouTuber or an actor. It's the same two pieces of info. It's just who cares? Who cares? So anyway, that's kind of my take on all that. All right. With that down, guys, I'd love to know your thoughts about this whole Casey Bloys situation with HBO and creating fake accounts and whatever. But anyway, that's just kind of my 2 cents worth and how I feel it and some of the lessons that I've learned in my life at any regard. So there's that. Okay. With that down, guys, we really should take a sponsor break. But you know what? Let's at least get started into the questions here before we go to our sponsor, shall we? We're going to start things off here with Cody Hunt Films, who writes, whenever they do reunite, I'm very much interested in Loki meeting Thor's daughter, Love. They both are adopted children raised by their biological father's enemies. Having gone through the evolution that he has, how do you think he'd react to her? That's interesting. I mean, of course, the big difference between Loki being adopted from the Frost Giants is that, you know, Odin slayed them and then he took the child. There's that. Or took him, you know, without permission. It's not like Laufey went to Odin and said, Odin, you and I don't see eye to eye on a lot, but I really respect you now. So here, can you please take my child and raise them? Right? That's not the case. At least Christian Bale's was, he sacrificed and he said, please take care of my daughter. So it's a little bit of a different situation, but still, I don't know if Loki, I think the new Loki would probably look at her as one of his own, the way he's kind of evolved, because I think she would almost become like a living symbol of a second chance, right? And that's really what the Loki series has been about Loki really working to try to earn a second chance. Even though he's died and been resurrected 17 times, he's kind of in the business of trying to validate a second chance for himself, right? And I think if he were to reunite with Thor, and at some point they will, and then he meets his niece, I think she will become like that living representation of a second chance to him. And I think he's going to be very protective of her. I don't know. That's just a guess. All right. Next up, we've got Garden Variety Vagabond, who writes, John, on the idea of Daredevil being a court procedural, I think you are being optimistic on how it would have been. The writers have no experience in writing TV. Never mind in that genre. It's a trickier one. It is a trickier one, but listen, as Kevin Feige once told me, a good storyteller is a good storyteller, right? The main problem with, say, She-Hulk wasn't that they blew it as a legal procedural. It's that they never made it a legal procedural, right? Like a lot of us for a long time leading up to She-Hulk, we were like, oh my God, if they can do this in an Ally McBeal style where it's a legal procedural and have a lot of the MCU elements in there at the same time, I mean, this could be really good. And the problem, I mean, there are 100 problems with She-Hulk, but the problem in that regard wasn't that they didn't write the legal procedural part of it well. It's that they didn't do it at all, right? The legal court part of it became an absolute afterthought, right? And so, could they have done it well? Yeah, I think they absolutely could have done it well. But listen, we've also seen people write certain types of material that they had great success writing before, and then the next one doesn't turn out well. So I would have still been very interested to see how that would turn out. And maybe they still will go down that road. We'll have to wait and see. All right, thanks for that, Garden Variety. Next up, we've got Garden Variety also writes, John, thanks for your explanation of Ramirez's age. You just gave the movie more depth for me. I remember what you're talking about. So Garden Variety wrote in the other day, I think it was the last open mic we did. And it was like, okay, in the upcoming Highlander reboot, why does it matter what age Ramirez is, played by Sean Connery in the original Highlander? Why does it matter what age Ramirez is in the new one? Because he's an immortal. His physical age shouldn't really matter. And Garden was 100% right about that. What I said was the reason to me why it is a relevant thing is that Ramirez is supposed to be this world-class warrior. And immortals stay the age that they are when they first die mortally. Like immortals aren't born and then that's it. They all think they're regular humans until they die for the first time and then come back to life. And that's when they realize they're immortal. And then that's the way they stay. Kind of like a vampire, right? Like in Interview with a Vampire, when the little girl is bitten and turned when she's a little girl, she's staying a little girl forever. So to me, Ramirez being a world-renowned warrior, he would have survived. I don't think he would have died at an earlier age. I think he would have survived until he got to the age where maybe he started to slow down a bit. And then maybe at some point, somebody got the best of him. So, we'll see. We'll see. But that's why I said I do think it's kind of key, not vitally important, but kind of key that he's a little bit older by the time they get to that Ramirez is a little bit older in the movie. All right. Thanks for that, Garden. Next up, Garden again writes, I love Paul Giamatti in Sideways. I also love him less loved duets with Andre Braugher. I always mispronounce that name. Plus Huey Lewis and Gwyneth Paltrow. It's quirky and as always, Giamatti Excel, and of course, I recommend his miniseries, David McCullough's John Adams. You know, John Adams is an interesting and actually a very divisive miniseries. Not everybody loved John Adams, and I'm going to be honest with you. Even as somebody who's a big, big fan of Paul, I didn't love John Adams either, to be honest with you. I didn't love it. There are certainly great things about it, and it certainly has a lot of upside. I just overall, I felt like it missed out on its potential, but you know, that's just me. But you know, Paul Giamatti is amazing. All right, next up. Garden again writes, gotta ask, due to your connection with Milo Ventimiglia, were you and Anne at his wedding to model Jera Mariano? Good on him. Wish him all the best. A Filipino girl, if I'm not mistaken. No, Anne and I were not at Milo's wedding. We were not invited to Milo's wedding. Now you might be saying, well, John, he was invited to your wedding. How come you're not invited to his? Well, look, I know Milo Ventimiglia, but I couldn't even tell you how many years it's been since I've had any communication with him. I had met him and got to know him a little bit through a couple of friends of mine who are directors and writers. And Milo is the reason, I'm not going to tell the whole story again. Many of you know it. Milo is responsible for me meeting Anne, my wife. Milo's responsible for me meeting her. And he was there when I met her. And so when we invited Milo to our wedding, it wasn't because we were such close friends with Milo Ventimiglia. We weren't. But it was really more a recognition that, you know, we never would have met each other if it weren't for Milo. And it was because of Milo that we met, and that's why Milo was invited to our wedding. But no, we were not invited to his wedding because he doesn't really know me at all that well. So there's that. All right, next up. Dan the Villain writes, hey, John, did you happen to watch The Amazing Digital Circus on YouTube? It's a 25-minute cute dark comedy cartoon. Has over 50 minutes. No, sorry, Dan, I have not. I've never even heard of it, to be honest with you. All right, next up. We got Full Boyle writes, hey, John, I have seen all the Star Wars movies and live action Disney Plus shows, but I feel there's still a lot I don't know about this world. Is there any material that you would recommend I check out to expand my Star Wars knowledge? The thing I would recommend the most, there's a book by Chris Taylor called How Star Wars Conquered the Universe. Or was it How George Lucas Conquered? No, it was How Star Wars Conquered the Universe by Chris Taylor. I read this book probably about 6 years ago. It's fantastic. The amount of background and everything like, there are many, many books that cover this kind of material, but I don't think there's a better one than this one. So again, I believe it's Chris Taylor, How Star Wars Conquered the Universe. And there's an Audible version of it. So I would get the audio version of it too, because the writer of the book does the narration as well. And it's beautifully done and it's incredibly informative. You'll learn a lot of great stuff. Yeah, I would say go and check that out. All right, guys, listen, we're going to take a quick second here before we continue on with all the questions you guys sent in. But before we do, we're going to take a moment and thank a couple of sponsors of today's episode, our friends at Marine Lair and the maker of the most comfortable shoes I've ever owned, Vessi. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's video, Marine Lair. It's official, guys. I have found the softest t-shirt of all time, so soft, it's ridiculous. All thanks to the San Francisco-based Marine Lair. Marine Lair is the go-to brand for great fitting and stylish closet staples. Their clothes are that perfect mix of laid-back style and also looks and feels premium. It's time to invest in a wardrobe that will actually last. For a limited time, the John Campea Show viewers and listeners get an exclusive 15% off with the code Campea15 at marinelair.com. Now, guys, you know I am not the most fashionable guy in the world, but I appreciate a good looking shirt, but more importantly, I appreciate a comfortable shirt. And the shirts that I've got from Marine Lair fit both of those beautifully. And they've even got sizes like Marge, which is in between medium and large, so everyone can get their perfect fit. The best part, if you buy any 3 tees from Marine Lair, you automatically get 20% off. And Marine Lair goes way beyond just t-shirts too. They've got super laid back, oversized shirts, pants, jackets, and all the cozy layers you want for the cooler seasons. I think we can all admit that the perfect tee can be hard to find. Look no further than Marine Lair. For a limited time, get 15% off with the code CAMPEA15 at marinelair.com. That's Campea15 for 15% off your entire order at marinelair.com. Saving your closet one shirt at a time. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of this video, Vessi. Now, you guys know I'm not exactly the most fashion conscious guy in the world, but I love a great pair of shoes that are comfortable and I can wear almost anywhere. And growing up in Canadian winters when my feet got wet a lot, waterproof would be nice too. Enter Vessi. They make the claim that they're not just fashionable and super comfortable, they're also waterproof. Now, you guys remember, when I got my first pair of Vessis, I put them to the ultimate waterproof test. I actually stuck my foot in my pool, my feet stayed dry, and the shoes stayed dry. Incredible. And they're the most comfortable pair of shoes I ever owned. Well, that made me want another pair. So I got another pair of Vessis that look great and just equal that world-class comfort that I got from that first pair of shoes. They are absolutely my favorite shoes that I've ever owned. Imagine your favorite sneaker style supercharged with waterproof technology and unmatched comfort. No matter how you like to stay active, Vessi has the shoes for you. Trail-ready high tops, effortless slip-ons, and classic court shoes, all with a waterproof twist. They are just as comfortable and stylish as your favorite sneakers, but even more versatile. So guys, if you're anything like me and you want the most comfortable pair of shoes that look great, that you can take out hiking, wear to work, go to the gym, or walk through the water and snow, go to vessi.com/campea and get yourself a pair today. Go to vessi.com/campea and get 15% off your order using the code CAMPEA. And thank you to our friends at Marine Lair and Vessi for sponsoring this episode. All right, guys, with that down, let's get back to your questions here, shall we? We left off with Full Boil, so we'll go over to Suthius, who writes, out of about 30 homes we got to for Halloween, only 2 homes recognized our costumes. Since my last name is Trong, we were TVA, Trong Variants Authority. My boys were Loki variants, and I was an agent. It was about 40 degrees, but don't worry, they're frost giants. First of all, I love that. I think that sounds amazing. Yeah, you know what's funny? Anne's favorite time of year is Halloween. Okay? Absolutely number one favorite time of the year is Halloween. I wish I could show you some of her costumes, but I can't right now. So, and one of the things she looked forward to most, like we bought our house last year, right? It was our first Halloween being homeowners. And the thing she was excited about the most was giving out candy to trick-or-treaters. And we live in a wonderful neighborhood. But we didn't realize there's really not any kids who live in our neighborhood. And so last year, literally 0 kids. We bought mountains of Halloween candy, chocolates. We even did some full chocolate bars, like mostly mini chocolate bars too with the other candy, but we even got a couple of packs of full chocolate bars. I mean, we were ready. We were armed to the titties, my friend. We had so much Halloween candy and we had nobody, not one kid, come down our street. So this year, Anne was very sad about the fact that, but we went out and got a little bowl of candy, one little bowl of candy. And then at about, sure enough, all night, nobody came to our door. And then at about, I was going to say 9, probably around 8:30, the first knock on our door. We're like, what? And Anne, she had fallen asleep on the couch. She jumped up. She was at the door. I'm like, I think that's the door. And she got so excited and she scrambled and she ran to the door and she opened it up. And sure enough, there was a couple of kids with an adult with them saying trick or treat, and Anne got to hand out candy. That was it. 1 door knock in 2 years. That was it. So we think next year we're going to find some friends that live in a more busy neighborhood just so we can go and hang out at their house and give out candy. So yeah, that was that. Anyway, thanks for sharing, Suthius. Next up, an anonymous viewer writes, hey, John, did you know the Canadians women's rugby team, the Ravens, is the 4th best team in the world? Never even heard of them, to be honest with you. They have got potential to win big championship in the future. Check out women's New Zealand haka. It's just as good as the men's. Yeah, listen, man, if there's any if there was any sport that I don't understand, and there's not a lot of sports I don't understand, but there are a couple. Cricket is one of them. Rugby is definitely one of them. If there was any sport that I don't understand that I wish I really wanted to understand, it's probably rugby. That's because it just looks so cool. All right. Next up, we got Suthius, who writes, binged Bodies in a Day. I'm dying to watch that show, man. Binged Bodies in a Day. No spoilers here. Great acting. Love the sci-fi concept. One aspect of the story involving the antagonist didn't work for me, and I wish they could have tweaked that aspect a little. Overall, thoroughly enjoyed it. I recommend it. You know what, Suthius? I've been hearing from not a lot of people I don't think are watching Bodies, but I'm hearing from people. Actually, maybe that's not true. Did I just read that it was like the #1 show on Netflix? Maybe more people are watching it than I thought, but it's definitely a show I am very much interested. The trailer really got me hooked, so I want to see it. All right. Willoughby Sting writes, 1 of 3. Hey, John, on Monday's open mic, you answered a question about movies and lost loved ones. In 2016, my dad was diagnosed with cancer, but passed away suddenly from a heart attack. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. And movies this year are doing a top job of making me miss him lately. From Indiana Jones, which was his Star Wars, to Mario, bringing back memories when he played Mario Kart with my sisters and me. Even Barbie, when he made me wish my baby sister's Barbie, when he made me wish my baby sister's Barbie a happy birthday, as it was her birthday too. Then Blue Beetle. I didn't expect much from Blue Beetle, but my wife and I streamed it on a whim. Firstly, it was rather good, but it had the most unexpected gut punch with Jaime's dad feeling all too familiar. Anyway, my point, take the time to show appreciation to your loved ones. Yeah, listen, I'll tell you what, and thank you for sharing that story, Willoughby. One of the greatest things about movies and TV shows is I always talk about how movies and TV shows to a lesser degree, but movies are experiential events, right? And nothing is better to me in life than shared experiences. And when you share an experience with somebody, whether it's rock climbing, going on a road trip, eating at an incredible restaurant or watching a great movie, when you have a shared experience with somebody, that becomes an anchor point in your memories, I believe. It becomes a forever anchor point. How many times have you heard me talk about, I'm about to get emotional. How many times have you heard me talk about, as a kid, going to see Tim Burton's Batman at the Lloyd D. Jackson Square Famous Players Theaters? That was downtown. Me and my best friend growing up, Brendan, we got on the bus, went down. Downtown is the first time I ever saw a giant line for a movie, was for this Batman movie. And, and I've always cherished that memory. But when my friend suddenly passed away, just before I left Collider and started the John Campea Show, when my friend passed away, that memory that was always there, and I always loved that memory. That memory became all the more special and all the more endearing and all the more important in my life. I remember exactly who I saw Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King with. I remember exactly where we went to go see it. I remember the seat I sat in. I remember the person that was with me. I remember seeing movies with my mom. A few years ago, Ann and I took a trip to Canada, took my family to go see a movie, and I still remember everything about it. And it's just, those shared experiences are so special and so important. And it's one of the reasons why, I go to movies alone sometimes. Like if there's a movie I really want to see and no one's available, I'll go see it by myself, especially when I used to live in Burbank and I could walk to the AMC. I would do that every once in a while. Sure, that's great. But I really prefer watching movies with people and having shared experiences. It might be one of the reasons why one of my favorite things in the world is to watch movies I've already seen and that I already love with somebody else who hasn't seen it yet. So I get to have that experience with them. It's just a really, really special thing. And I think we don't appreciate it as much as we should. And I'm glad you had that experience with your dad and you have those memories, man. All right. Next up, Dave Bowers writes, pardon me. My pitch to Marvel right now would be a Chad Stahelski directed Punisher movie. without Bernthal. I would prefer with or without Bernthal. I would prefer R-rated, but could easily get away with a PG-13. Just a basic gritty revenge thriller with gun-to-gun combat. Let's go. I mean, listen, if I woke up tomorrow, Dave, and they announced that Chad was going to direct a Punisher movie, I'd be all for it. I totally would. But I always wince a little bit. I'm going to admit it. I always wince a little bit whenever like we pull out, we as film fans, because I do it too, you do it too, everybody who's watching this has done this. We just pull out a director who's known for doing that one thing because that's the only thing that they can do, and they're the only ones who can do it. Like, so I get a little, so if you saw me do a little bit of an eye roll when I read Chad's name there, it's not because I don't think he wouldn't do a good job with that. It's like, really? Like, just because he did John Wick, that's the only person in the world who can do a gun thing? And I know I'm just busting your chops a little bit, Dave. I'm just busting your chops a little bit because I've done it. I've done this too. I'm guilty of it too. 100% I am. But yeah, like when Christopher Nolan, I mean, he's still super hot. He's still one of the hottest directors in the world. Yes. But I mean, back around The Dark Knight to about 10 years later, it felt like every movie franchise was coming out. It's like, oh, who should direct this movie? It felt like everybody would say, oh, Christopher Nolan should direct it. It's like, and when Lord of the Rings was out and everything, the conversations about who should direct this new movie. Oh, Peter Jackson should direct. Everything was Peter Jackson. And I feel like today, every time an action franchise comes up, the only name people mention is Chad Stahelski. And look, I'm sure he would do a great job, but I think there would probably be other directors who could probably do a really good job too. All right. With that down, guys, let's keep things going here. Where is I'm going to switch over now to the live chats that you guys have been sending in. And we're going to start off with Connor Dorian, who writes, they are making a Poltergeist TV series for Amazon Prime Video. Yeah, I believe, wasn't that announced? I mean, I might not be remembering this right, but wasn't that announced like a really long time ago? I think it was. Anyway, maybe not. It'll be interesting to see how good they do it. Chef Rigo writes, am I tripping, or does AMC not put the name of the movie outside their theater doors anymore? Thought it was just my AMC, but I noticed 2 other AMCs don't. You know, I've only been to a couple of AMC theaters recently. Now, at my local, well, at least AMC Burbank 16, they have a little digital display above the door of each theater. And it would, like, in red lettering scroll telling you the movie and the showtime that was playing in there. And I believe that's still there at the AMC Burbank 16. Now, the AMC that I go to mostly these days, which is the AMC Tyler Galleria in Riverside, California, I don't think they have that. And I kind of wish they would, because even though I know I'm going to Theater 7, it would be nice once I got to Theater 7 just to reassure me that the name of the movie was above it. But I'd have to check. But I'm pretty sure the AMC in Burbank still has it. So I don't know that it's all AMCs don't do it anymore. But you're right. I have noticed that a couple that used to do it aren't doing it anymore. All right. Next up. Thanks for that, Chef Rio. We've got Harvs K, who writes, more Deadpool 3 titles. Here we go. Deadpool does Marvel. Actually, I don't mind that. That's not bad. Deadpool Menage a Trois. Also kind of like that. Deadpool Spectacular. No, not that one, but Deadpool does Marvel. I really like that one. Deadpool Menage a Trois. I can get behind that one. Spectacular, not so much, but I like your suggestions there, Harvs. All right. Next up. Connor Dorian writes, the canceled Nautilus TV series has found a home on the AMC network. Yeah, so there was this Captain Nemo show that was supposed to go to Disney Plus, if I remember. And I believe they already shot it. Like, I believe it was shot. I think it's done. I think they shot the thing. But Disney canceled it before they even aired it. Now, I remember at the time them saying they were going to still shop it around to see if another network wants to pick it up. And maybe it sounds like it found a home. I'm interested in seeing it because I really like Captain Nemo stories and the Nautilus. All right. Next up. Jordan Peters writes, is there a movie that is hated by both critics and the general movie-going audience that you love? Yeah, several, actually. For me, that is Netflix's adaptation of Death Note from 2017. Thank you for everything you do. Yeah, man. I'm not going to lie to you, my friend. That is a movie I did not like. I did not like that death note. But again, that's the beautiful thing about films. It's art. And as art, it's subjective. That means it's going to hit us all in different ways. And just because I didn't like it doesn't mean you can't like it. So that's good. I mean, for me, yeah, I mean, I've always had a low. The one that stands out to me a lot is Armageddon. I know everybody bags on Armageddon. It's the Michael Bay asteroid movie. I don't think the critics liked it very much. I don't think there's a lot of people who like it, but I love Armageddon. I don't care what anybody says, man. I love that movie. And there's always a bunch. And you know, that's whenever you talk about underrated movies, if somebody talks to me and says, I got some underrated movies I like, and then they list a movie that either the critics loved or the audience loved, it's like, that's not an underrated movie. An underrated movie is a movie that you think has way more merit than everybody else thinks. That's what underrated means. You may be right, you may be wrong, but you can't say a movie's underrated if there's a whole bunch of people that love it, whether it's the audience or the critics. To say a movie's underrated is say, there's a movie here that I find more value in than almost everybody else does. So any movie that you would say is underrated would fall under that. But one that always comes up for me is Armageddon, because I don't think there's a lot of people that love that movie. Uni Shin is saying in the live chat that they liked Armageddon. Good. You and me can have our own little club together. All right, guys, listen. We still have more questions to go, but before we get to those and finish things off, we're going to take one more ad break here, and we're going to thank a couple of more sponsors of today's episodes, my mobile service provider, and they should be yours, Mint Mobile, and the people who give me the best teeth brushing experience of my life, the folks over at Quip. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's video, Mint Mobile. Signing your life away to a big wireless provider is kind of like being trapped on a roller coaster from hell. Sure, it looks like fun at first. They probably even threw in a free phone, but now you can't get off. Month after month of insane bills and unexpected thrills, like overages and surprise fees. If that sounds like your current big wireless plan, it's time to get off the ride with Mint Mobile. For a limited time, wireless plans from Mint Mobile are just $15 a month. That's unlimited talk, text, and data for just $15 a month. You guys know before I came to Mint Mobile, I was paying triple what I am paying now on the standard big wireless plan, and I will never go back. All plans come with unlimited talk, text, and high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts. To get your new unlimited wireless plan for just $15 a month and get the plan shipped right to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/Campea. That's mintmobile.com/Campea. Cut your wireless bill to just $15 a month at mintmobile.com/Campea. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of this video, Quip. Guys, you know that good health starts with good habits, and Quip makes it easy by delivering all the oral care essentials that you need to care for your mouth. For example, their incredible electric toothbrush. Guys, I've been using electric toothbrushes for years, and this is easily the best one I've ever owned. Timed sonic vibrations with 30-second pulses to guide a dentist-recommended 2-minute clean. A lightweight and sleek design for adults and kids with no wires or bulky charger to weigh you down. Reusable handles in a range of sleek metal hues, as well as bright plastic colors, sure to make a pop on your bathroom counter. Skip the batteries and snap into healthy habits with the new rechargeable electric toothbrush. All the features of the original Quip, plus one magnetic charge, powers up to 3 months of brushing. In addition to brush heads, Quip also delivers fresh floss, toothpaste, mouthwash, and gum refills every 3 months from just $7. So if you go to getquip.com/Campea right now, you'll get 20% off any electric toothbrush, mint and gum dispenser, or water flosser. That's your 20% off any electric toothbrush, mint and gum dispenser, water flosser at getquip.com/Campea. That's getquip.com/Campea. Quip, the good habits company. And thank you to our friends at Mint Mobile and Quip for sponsoring this episode. By the way, this has nothing to do with anything else. I just feel like I got to share this with you guys. So you guys remember that I dressed as Jason Kelce, right, on the show last week? Well, the reason I had a Jason Kelce outfit is because Ann and I had this idea to dress as Jason Kelce and Travis Kelce. So Ann's Halloween costume last night for Halloween, let me see if I can bring this up here. Hold on a second. That's not quite fitting. Let me see if there we go. My wife Ann dressed as Travis Kelce with Taylor Swift. Yes, that blow-up doll is supposed to be Taylor Swift. I remember seeing the blow-up doll in my house and asking Anne, why is there a blow-up doll here? And Anne saying, don't worry about it. That was before I didn't know what she was doing with her costume. But yes, she was Travis Kelce with Taylor Swift. My wife comes up with the most awesome costumes. Anyway, okay, with that down, let's get back to your questions here, shall we? Next up, that was Jordan. Next up, we're going to go to Nexus Fuel, who writes, oh, by the way, guys, just so you know, I have turned off the super chats because we're running out of time, so I turned them off. So if you didn't get a chance to send yours in, send it on the next one. All right, Nexus Fuel writes, heard from a friend who saw a test screen of Garfield last weekend that the movie is very charming and beautifully animated. Not a single bad review from neither kids nor parents. All right, Nexus, I'm going to tell you right now, I don't believe you. Or I don't believe the person who told you that they saw it. It's kind of way far early for that. Not to mention when you do go to a test screening, you have to sign massive NDAs not to reveal what you saw or anything like that. And you certainly don't get to chat with the other people in the test screenings about what they thought about it. So I'm just saying, I think somebody is misleading you. I don't know. There may be another explanation. Totally might be. I'm just saying, I'm always very dubious of people who say, I saw a test screening. It's like, well, if you actually saw the test screening, you're not supposed to be talking about it. And you certainly didn't talk to the other people there. So again, maybe it might be something else altogether, 100%. I'm just saying I'm a little bit dubious of that, but that's just me. All right. Next up, Mickey Veach writes, sorry if this has been discussed, but the official MCU timeline book doesn't mention the Netflix shows, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or Inhumans at all. Probably answers that. It includes the Agent Carter show, though. Yeah, listen, I don't know why some people still pretend like it's even up for debate. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and all that kind of stuff, it has definitively been put to rest. It is not a part of the official MCU timeline. It's just not. Like Kevin Feige, all the way back, this is how far back it goes. All the way back at the Marvel MCU Phase 3 announcement day. Remember, I was at it. Kevin Feige was on stage and they were talking about, that's when they announced that, Captain America, the Serpent Society is actually Captain America Civil War. And they brought out Chadwick Boseman on stage with Chris Evans on stage and Tony on stage and Robert Downey Jr. on stage playing tug of war with T'Challa and all this kind of stuff. Even at that, somebody brought up, okay, we've talked about this before. Somebody brought up a question. Where does Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and stuff like that fit in with the Marvel Cinematic Universe? And Kevin Feige was very direct. He said, I don't have anything to do with that. That's really not our thing. And repeatedly throughout the MCU, they've made it very clear that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. The MCU has never done anything to connect to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. often tried to connect to the MCU, but the MCU never connected to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And they really drove that point home in WandaVision when they bring in the Darkhold, and that was not the Darkhold, that was in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. anyway. So yes, that does put that to rest. That does put that to bed. It's not the same. It was never the same thing. And they've affirmed that many, many times. So yeah, it's almost like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. should be considered as something of a what if, you know? Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. should kind of be considered like a what if, because like you did have, for example, you had Nick Fury pop up in it. Well, Nick Fury's part of the MCU, right? But that was Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. referencing the MCU. Again, the MCU never referenced Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. The MCU never referenced any of the things that happened in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So it was like a one-way relationship. It's like a girl you have a crush on and you keep calling her, but she never calls you. Hate to break it to you. You're not in a relationship with that girl, but I call her all the time. Yeah, but she never calls you. So there's that. But yes, you're right. Their absence in that timeline book puts a final explanation point on it. All right. Next up, where are we at? King Daddy Go writes, so Disney just bought the remaining stakes of Hulu. I don't believe they have. They have not. They're going to. Because it's been a question about, is Comcast going to buy Disney stakes? Is Disney going to buy Comcast stakes? It's been settled. Disney's going to be the one buying out Comcast. but they still don't know what the final price is going to be. That's got to go to arbitration. Disney is thinking they're going to have to spend about $8.6 billion to get the remaining stuff of Hulu. But ultimately, it's going to come down to an arbitrator to determine how much they're going to have to spend for it. So I don't believe it's all wrapped and done yet, but that is what's going to happen. Disney is going to be taking over Hulu stuff. King Daddy Go saying it was confirmed $8.6 billion. No, it was not. Let me read this to you here now. This comes from the Hollywood Reporter's Dylan Byers, who writes this. This isn't the announcement talking about the $8.6 billion, okay? This is what they said. This isn't the announcement of a Hulu deal so much as a declaration by Disney that they're starting negotiations with Comcast over fair price for Hulu. And their starting position is, predictably, the lowest possible offer, $8.61 billion. Final appraisal won't be until next year. When again, that's Dylan Byers from the Hollywood Reporter. So it's what's going to happen. It's now official. That's what it's going to be. And Disney, I think, can even take over operations fully before the sale is even final. So you're going to see Disney taking over Hulu before the finalization of the sale. But the actual price has not been determined. Disney is anticipating $8.6 billion, but it's probably going to be more than that if you actually dig in and read the articles. So yeah, there's that. Also, this got sent to me. My analyst at Disney said that Disney will pay $8.6 billion, take operational control of Hulu on December 1st, and probably pay more when they agree on a value or the arbitrator decides on the value in early 2024. So there you have it. It's going to happen. They're going to get it. But the final price tag is not going to be $8.6 billion. It's going to be more than that. All right. Anyway, next up. Let's see. Philip writes, hey, how do you feel about critics reviewing an entire season of a show based on only watching a portion of the season through screeners? I'm especially talking about dramas like House of the Dragon. Well, here's the thing. Critics do not review the entire season of a show, right? If they've only seen 4 episodes, they tell you we've only seen 4 episodes, right? And as long as you do that, there's nothing shady. It's completely above board. Like, for example, the first batch of reviews just came out for Monarch, the Godzilla show, right? But all the critics were very upfront about saying, we only saw the first batch of episodes. We're only reviewing the first batch of episodes. What we say here only applies to the first batch of the episodes. But here's what we thought of the first batch of episodes that we saw. They don't say this show in its entirety sucks. They may say the first batch of episodes suck. They may say the first batch of episodes is great. But as long as they're clear and upfront about that, I have no problem with it. That's perfectly fine. However, so that's from the critic's point of view. From the studio's point of view, or the television network's point of view, I don't like the practice of only letting them see a few episodes. Now, in old television days, that might be the case because in the old cable television model, they would still be shooting the season while the show is airing, right? Like, go back to Arrow. Arrow might already be on episode 4, but I'll be talking to Stephen Amell, who's in Vancouver, at the same time that episode 4 is airing of this season. But Stephen Amell right now, I'm talking to him. He's in Vancouver on set, like filming episode 16 right now. So like in the old days, it would have been impossible to let critics review TV shows before they air. You could only let them see the pilot, or you could only let them see the first few episodes. I mean, so today networks could they've got all the shows completely done before they start airing on a streamer. They could give them the whole series. I wish they would, but they don't. And that's their prerogative. But as far as the critics go, I have no problem with critics as long as they're clear. What we are reviewing here is the first 3 episodes, or what we're reviewing here is the first 4 episodes. As long as you're clear, as long as you do that, to me, it's completely above board and fine. Although I do wish the networks would give them the whole series. I'm fine if they don't. All right. Zeus Fleming writes, R.I.P. Coach Bobby Knight. Oh, did Bobby Knight die? I had not heard that. Let me pull up, it's going to open ESPN here for a second, because if that's true, yeah, there it is. Front page ESPN. Basketball coaching great Bob Knight dies at 83. Wow. He was one of the most recognizable coaches in all basketball ever. And I don't even know if he ever coached in the NBA. I mean, just as a college coach, he was like sometimes legendary for the wrong reasons. But yeah, so I didn't hear about that. Thanks for sharing that, Zeus. All right. Next up, we got Philip, who writes, John, did you know I studied under Chick Norris? He was on the 3rd floor. I was on the 2nd floor. I thought you were talking about Chick Hearns. I don't know, like, who Chuck Norris is. Now, if you're talking about Chick Norris, if you're talking about Chuck Norris, as in my Chuck Norris is actually, that's his real name, is Chuck Norris. He's actually a friend of mine. He was an editor on my movie, one of my first friends that I had when I moved to LA. If you're saying you actually know Chuck, that's pretty awesome, because Chuck is a great guy. All right, David Cushmore writes, is Halloween Ends the last movie of the franchise? It's the last movie of that iteration of the franchise. There will be more Halloween movies, I'm sure, but it'll probably be like a rebooted fashion, all that kind of stuff. At least that's my guess. You'd have to ask the people over at NBC Universal, I think. Oh no, they just sold the rights. I can't remember who they sold the rights to, but anyway, you'd have to, I think that is the end of that iteration of the franchise. All right. Marcus Penner writes, hey John, just wrapped Gen V episode 7. This show is awesome. Thoughts on episode 7 and predictions for tomorrow, and maybe how the disease will play into season 4 of The Boys. I have no predictions. I think what we're going to focus more in the final episode, of course, I'm wearing my Godolkin University shirt. I think what the final episode is going to focus more is really just more on Marie and just how powerful she is. I mean, I think theoretically, when you look at the nature of her power, and the power of the woman running for vice president, theoretically speaking, she should be able to kill Homelander. I mean, she can control Homelander's blood. Theoretically speaking, she should be able to take out Homelander if she really wants to. Now, of course, Homelander could take her out too. It depends on who gets the drop on the other one. But I think it's going to really focus more on her. And I think we're going to get introduced to her sister. I think. That's just a guess. I don't know if that's what they're going to do. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. All I know, man, is that I have been absolutely 100% loving this show. It's been absolutely fabulous. Even if the final episode sucks, this show has been so good up till now, I won't care. Even if the final episode sucks, I won't care, because it's just been so great. But I'm sure they're going to stick the landing. Fingers crossed at any rate. And then we'll see if the disease thing goes anywhere. All right. Next up, because you know if Billy Butcher found out, he would love to get his hands on that. All right. Seconds from Disaster writes, hey, John, with all the planned changes and scandals with actors, do you think Marvel shoots themselves in the foot by announcing so much at once so far out? No, because remember, the stuff with Marvel hasn't been like it was at DC, where DC would announce all these things and literally every other project they announced never happened, right? You can literally count on one hand, less than one hand, the number of projects that Marvel has announced that ultimately didn't happen. Very few. So, no, I don't think they really do. I mean, look, the reality is, in the world we live in today, and Marvel is pretty good at this, and I've got my criticisms of Marvel, but they're pretty good at this. In the world we live in today, with how easily information can get disseminated, Marvel knows it is best to get ahead of it. Because once you sign an actor to a deal, there's already 7 people that know. That means there's 1 million people who could potentially know by tomorrow. And do you want to be the one to announce it and take control of the story? Or do you want it to get leaked to the Hollywood Reporter or to Variety or some, butt chuckle site? And I think it's probably better that you come out. I mean, you don't have to come out right away, but Understand that you got to make announcements. So no, I don't really think they shoot themselves in the foot because it hasn't really hurt them, to be honest with you. Other things have hurt them, but that thing hasn't hurt them so much right now. All right, Dave Cushmore writes, do you like fighting movies like Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, Dead or Alive, and Tekken? Oh yeah, I'm a huge martial arts guy my whole life. I love combat movies. I mean, there are good combat movies and there are bad combat movies. Want to see the greatest kung fu movie of all time, my friends? Look up a little film called Shaolin versus Llama. So awful and so awesome. Kung Fu versus Llama. Go look it up. Absolutely brilliant. But yeah, I love good action films, particularly great great stuff. But like Dead or Alive, was that a movie? Was Tekken a movie? I don't know if those were even movies yet. I don't know if you meant game. Maybe you meant games. You like fighting games like Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, Dead or Alive, and Tekken. Funny enough, if you meant games, I'm actually not a big fan of fighting games. I mean, when I used to go to the roller gardens, the roller rink, and I would play Street Fighter just like everybody else. Like I love playing Street Fighter, but I can't remember the last time I bought a fighting game, to be honest with you. I know they're super popular though. Ismail Montoya writes, hey John, long time no see, but I'm back. Good to have you here, Ismail. I just saw The Northman. Love The Northman. Skarsgård is so good in that. It was the craziest turn of events, the mom scene. Yep. Good seeing you. Bring on the filthy. I'll tell you what, man, that The Northman, it's a tragedy more people didn't go see that. I believe it was directed by Robert Eggers, who directed like The Witch and Lighthouse. That was the name of the Robert Pattinson movie, right? Lighthouse? What was the name of that movie? Am I not remembering the name of it? I think it was called The Lighthouse. Anyway, help me out live chat if the movie was called indeed The Lighthouse. Anyway, I loved Northman. Michael Gonzalez said, yes, that's what it's called. I love Northman. I think that's his best film. And so few people saw it. And I thought it was absolutely brilliant. I loved it. So if you guys haven't seen it, and Skarsgård is crazy good in it. Nicole Kidman is crazy good in it. Go see it, man. Or check it out on streaming where you can find it and watch it. All right. And the final question of the day comes to us from Shamrock Vibes, who writes, I know you're not a fan of the Beatles, but hearing John Lennon's voice on the Here and Now documentary got me, definitely had a tear in my eye. Yeah, it's always funny, like, as in any kind of fandom, and I'm sure this is true of everybody, there's something that the vast majority of people love that maybe just doesn't click with you, whether it's a TV show, a movie, a musical act, whatever. In the world of movies, for me, it's the original Blade Runner. I wish I could lie to you to pretend I'm cool and say I love the original Blade Runner, but I don't. I actually don't like the Blade Runner. I don't think it's like garbage, but I don't actually like the original Blade Runner. Don't act all precious. Everyone has a movie that most people love that you don't. All right. I'm just man enough to admit it. I don't love the original Blade Runner. I preferred Blade Runner 2049. In the world of music, it's actually the Beatles. Now, I don't hate the Beatles. Don't get me wrong. And growing up playing in bands and stuff like that, like I have, all of my friends, all of my music, everybody loved and worshiped the Beatles. And I get it. And the Beatles have some songs I really love. Absolutely. But I've never been, it's not that I hate the Beatles. I've just never been big on the Beatles. Like, I'm more of a the Rolling Stones kind of guy. I'm like, Stones, man, give me that. But yeah, it's one of the things, but man, everybody, and my friend, Scott Mance, oh my God, he loved, whenever it gets brought up that, I don't love the Beatles, and Scott Mance, who's the happiest, most positive guy in the world, he looks like he's going to go into a murderous rage. Like, he looks like he's going to kill a fool when I mention, I don't really like the Beatles. What the fuck did you just say? I don't really love the Beatles. What the fuck did you just say? I mean, yeah, it's one of those things, but I admit it. Anyway, guys, that'll do it for today's installment of Open Mic. Thank you so much for being here and coming along for the ride with me. A super pleasure having all you guys. Big special thank you to all of you guys who sent in questions. Number one, because you gave us all the thing we talked about. But number two, you support our channel while you did it. And all of us involved with the John Campea YouTube channel, thank you guys so much for your support. Don't forget to come on back and join us for the John Campea Show tomorrow. We've already got a huge list of things. Actually, let me pull up the stuff we've already got lined up to talk about tomorrow. So we're going to be talking about that Variety article a little bit more in depth. So we're definitely going to go over that. We're going to talk about the Hulu finances with going to Disney. We're going to break all that down. Five Nights at Freddy's just became the most watched thing ever on Peacock. We're going to talk about some of the changes they were going to make to Blade. We're going to talk about oh God, there's just a lot of stuff that we've already got lined up, and we're going to get more, and we hope that you guys will come back and join us for that tomorrow. So that'll do it for me, guys. Thanks a lot for being here, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.